We always begin with a perspective. It doesn't matter what your perspective is. You don't have to go sideways. It's not about going sideways, left or right. It's about going deeper. And so perspective precedes understanding. And so outlier's perspective. My brethren, another fellow outlier, my little brother, Conscious Reason, he asked me to elaborate on what I mean by whatever you do is a practice, and whatever you practice, you become. What I mean by that is that whatever you choose to do, consciously or unconsciously, is a practice. And whatever you practice, you become. How is it a practice? Your behaviors, your thoughts, your words, and the way that you move about your day represents your beliefs. Not the beliefs that you espouse to believe, but the true sponsoring beliefs underneath it all. Hopefully we're authentic enough and true to ourselves enough to where we are representing ourselves accurately to the people we come encounter with. But oftentimes that's not the case because we don't feel safe enough. And there's no judgment there. I extend compassion in that space. But what I mean by whatever you do is a practice, whatever you practice, you become. If you practice hiding yourself, then you become pretty damn good at hiding yourself, for example. You become a sensei at hiding yourself. And so when it comes to stepping out, there's a whole lot of anxiety and discomfort in that space because the mind is not used to you stepping into the space of being courageous. It's something new. And when the mind is introduced to a new behavior, a new concept, there is resistance because familiarity equates to safety with the mind. And so be mindful of every single thing that you do. If you wake up in the morning and the first thing you think is a miserable thought, I can't stand to wake up and go to this damn job. I got to go look at these same miserable people and I got to do the same miserable paperwork. And then I'm going to come home feeling all beat up and tired. And then I'm going to go to my miserable bed and I'm going to have some miserable sleep, restless sleep. And then I'm going to wake up and do the same miserable thing again until I make it to Saturday where I can get drunk. If that is your practice, what you're doing is practicing being miserable. The first 15 to 30 minutes, and really I say an hour, but the first 15 to 30 minutes of the day is the most important part of your day. You are literally setting your mind in a certain frequency that first 15 to 30 minutes of your day. And again, that begins to mold and shape and influence your perception. And perception is reality. So if you wake up and you practice thinking miserable the first thing you do in the morning, and guess what? You've mastered being miserable. A lot of us don't understand how to be happy because we practice being miserable so often. So how do I be happy? I don't have to ask anybody how to be miserable. They will give me a laundry list long of examples and ways and habits I can endorse, I can practice in order to be miserable. But how many of us have taken that step of moving into our authenticity to practice being happy? Happiness is tied directly to how authentic you are. Directly to how authentic you are. So when you place your values, your value system in juxtaposition to how you carry about your day, how you practice, if you are not in alignment with that, then that's what's causing a discomfort. That's what's causing the lower emotions. We have to be authentic to ourselves. It doesn't matter what they say over there, or even what you were told you think you should be doing with your life. What feels inherent to you, what you feel deeply within, is something that's compelling you to move forward and move in this direction. I don't care if it's you just retire being a doctor and then become a lifelong circus clown. Let me tell you, you jump out there and you be the best damn circus clown you can be. And you call me up because I'll be there to watch and support you. What wisdom do you gather from the phrase, "A tree cut off from its roots is dead" by Marcus Garvey?
I think that when you talk about narrative, which for me, as a writer, I always go back to narrative. The way that we define ourselves and find meaning in life is through our stories. And so when you're cut off from your history, you can't really see your full self. You don't know what is in your blood. You don't know what you've experienced. You don't know what you've survived, and because you don't know everything that you've survived and everything that you've accomplished, you don't know what you're capable of surviving or what you're capable of accomplishing. Um, and of course, you can tell yourself, well, I can do anything if I set my mind to it. Maybe so. But I think that we find inspiration in the things that we have achieved and in the things that we have survived. And I think that it's just really important. I like all great adages, there's some exaggeration in that, right? And that's what makes it poetic. That's what makes it memorable. I think that we have continued to survive. Many of us being cut off from our roots. I year before last went with my wife back to her native land, which is Nigeria, and it's my first time in Africa. And I walked outside the house, her grandmother's house, and I'm just standing there, and I'm like, damn! It was like the first day. I was like, damn, I'm in Africa. You know, it's like it was that moment. You know, I was like, I'm in Africa. You know, and then I thought about, like, you know, many years ago, there was somebody just like me who had hopes, who had dreams, who had desires, and somebody just like laid hands on that person and grabbed them and threw them on a boat, and like took them. Like it was this moment where I really was trying to think about someone I don't know, someone whose name I don't know, and we'll never know, right? Was kidnapped, was abducted, and lived a life of servitude and probably, you know, a life of torture. And because of all of that and many other things, you know, because they were able to survive that, I'm here.
How I've learned through life is actually mostly through the physical, and I say that my personal belief is that the physical is no more than the manifestation of spiritual laws, and so much of what I observe in the spiritual, such as birds, for example, and I can't believe I'm going here, but you know, I had some questions, but I got to get this out. Such as birds, you know, the thought that mama birds, when baby birds get too big, the mama bird will take her beak. She will take her beak and turn the twigs around with her beak, and so that the twigs begin to poke the baby birds, making the nest uncomfortable, letting them know that, hey, it's time for you to fly off and find your own nest, right? And I think about that, and that mama bird, in that infinite wisdom that she possesses, the fact that she knows how dangerous it is out there, but what she also knows is that in spite of the dangers that exist out there, they sure enough can't live if they stay right here where it's safe at. Again, sailboats are safest at harbor, but they were never built to remain docked.
Yeah.
You know, and so when I look at the infinite wisdom of that, I take that, and how do I make that practical? Let me tell you, brother, anytime I felt uncomfortable when I was an employee, anytime I felt uncomfortable, I said, it's time to go. I've surrendered. I put in my resignation before I even had anything else lined up, trusting that the universe was already telling me that it was time to go based off of that same principle. And so when I look at the physical, man, I'm always studying the physical world, the natural world, so that I can understand the universe, the universal laws that exist, the divine laws that exist right here in front of us. You know, those divine laws are alive and they're moving every single moment. All we have to do is just sit still and be present for a moment. He said that the mind is a building with thousands of rooms. And he said each room has one label on the door. And he said, we are not the mind. What we are is awareness. And he said that if you picture awareness, picture us being awareness, being a bright glowing orb that then enters into this dark building, being the mind. And the areas that that we go to, us being awareness, being that bright orb, we light up. And so we see these areas of the brain light up. And so we go to a door, and these doors are labeled, let's say, love, peace, joy, attraction, hate, fear, whatever, ambition. We go to a door, and based on the label on that door, when we enter, let's say fear. No, let's be more positive. Let's say love. So the door is labeled love. We enter into that door. In that room consists of loving thoughts, just filled with thoughts and memories of that pertain to that theme of love. And so as we look at these thoughts and we remember, we see these memories and watch these memories spin around this room, we then have an emotion that comes a part of that then produces experience. Because first thought, a situation occurs, and then there's an interpretation of that situation, which then produces the emotional experience, which then produces experience itself. And of course, as human beings, we've come here to have an experience. So we go into this door, us being awareness now, the mind being this black, this dark building. We go up inside this room of love, and there's loving thoughts in there. And what we see in there, these thoughts, these memories, we call consciousness, because we become conscious of the thoughts that exist in that room based off of that label. What is being said, what he was teaching, and again, I'm still a novice at this, but what he was teaching was basically our mind, when it's untrained, will go down the neural pathways or the hallways that it has always gone down. So if you practice going down to the door of fear or anger or bitterness or whatever, the mind automatically pushes you back down that way, because that's the path of least resistance, because you didn't create a trail directly to that. And so without training, the mind pushes it down the hallways, no matter what we feel about it, down the pathways that it is most familiar to. It feels most safe, even though it doesn't make sense. It's not logical. It feels safest in the room of fear, because it operated mostly in fear. And we've been standing in that room of fear for so much of our lives. And so it becomes uncomfortable for the mind to go somewhere else down an unfamiliar hallway or pathway, because it's a path that wasn't traveled yet, And so what he says is that as we are intentional with our mind, our awareness, the mind pushing our awareness to different rooms that we don't really care for it to go to, as we are intentional about becoming aware of that, conscious of that, and then stop the mind in its tracks and then redirect it via compassion, having compassion for ourselves, not judging ourselves, because the mind will definitely judge the shit out of you for making a mistake. So with loving compassion, we grab our awareness and direct it in direction, push it in the direction that we want it to go in. And again, with that level of intentionality, because intentionality reflects relationship. That is my main statement. That level of intentionality right there, as long as you continue to be intentional, that neural pathway that you are intentionally farming based off of your desires, which are based off of higher emotions and higher experiences, then become clear for the mind. And now you're using the mind as a tool instead of the mind leading you. The mind was never meant to be the vanguard. It was meant to be the tool. It was meant to be the student, the follower. But that requires intentionality. The unexamined life is not worth living. I'm not teaching you anything that you didn't already know, and I probably learned from you. So
Socrates.
How do we break the habit of allowing the past to be more of a crutch as opposed to the inspiration that it was meant to be?
Well, how do people break habits, right? If we're talking about breaking habits, like how do people break habits? There are a lot of approaches. A lot of it has to do with your personality type. One approach for one person might not work for the next person. You talk to somebody who was able to kick smoking, and somebody might say, "Oh, I used a patch." Another person might say, "Man, I quit cold turkey."
Right.
And yeah. It is. I think you break a habit by committing yourself to finding what works for you. But I would also say, like everything else, man, you do it a little at a time. Like you do the next thing that you can do, and then you do the next thing that you can do. I remember when I was a kid, man, my room would get so messy, and my mom would tell me to clean my room, and I'd just be like, I don't even know where to start, and I'd just be paralyzed and be like sitting there, like, man, I don't want to clean this room,
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, like, pick up this sock, all right, pick up another sock. And it just, you just got to keep picking up socks, man. There's no easy answers to there's no way around doing the work. And for many of us who have these traumas, I was abused as a child. My stepdad was extremely violent, and I was the oldest, so I got the brunt of it. And I was the only one who wasn't his biological child. So Yeah, I got it pretty raw, and it was something that's always going to stay with me, right? Um, those splinters are always going to be in my skin, you know. And so for me, it's about just putting in a daily practice of thinking about what kind of father I want to be to my kids. Thinking about, well, you know, yeah, I didn't have a great dad, but you know what? I had an amazing mom. I'm grateful for that, you know.
Mhm.
Um, and
Gratitude. Gratitude is
yeah,
the highest state of receivership. So yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
yeah, I think that the way to break out of that habit is to just embrace the things that bring you joy, and make a habit of letting go of the things that don't bring you joy, that don't do you any good. It's okay. So like this is old, and I don't know if anybody's ever heard it. It's from one of those files that you're like, oh, this is weird. I'm gonna put this in a file and not read it anywhere. So like I'm gonna read it here. Nobody's heard it. It's
Mhm.
called Wanted Poster. I haven't looked at this poem in years, so this is gonna be interesting. Above this text is a photo of my daughter. She's a 21-year-old African American college student who lives with me, her shivering father. We've lived in this neighborhood for over 10 years, though I doubt any hood could contain the enormous afro that has blossomed from her scalp. I happen to know that she owns more than one hooded sweatshirt. The latest, a gift for when she edited sound for a TV commercial that I performed in. If you were to follow her down one of our streets, you'd probably get lucky enough to hear her sing. Her voice is a fire alarm. All her life, she has dreamed of becoming a singer as forcefully as little boys dream of becoming superheroes. She has already saved more than one of us. Please do not be afraid of her. That confident stride is meant to deter predators, not scare them into action. Please do not hurt her. Those brash mannerisms are only indicators of a cool that people our age will never get back. I want you to protect her as aggressively as you would protect your own child. I want you to be as honorable as carrying a firearm should require you to be. I want you to know that an entire world cares if she lives or dies.
Woo. Hold on a second, brother. Hold on now.